Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So we've been talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows multiple times over the past couple of months, and the outrage surrounding this game has only intensified, especially among Japanese gamers. Now, why is that happening? Well, it's the choice of the main character, Yasuke. This is someone who has been historically labeled as a retainer for many years. However, as you can see, Assassin's Creed has promoted this character as a samurai. Now, curiously, only a month ago, the Wikipedia page had always displayed Yasuke as a retainer, not a samurai. However, over the past month or so, as many games journalists and game developers have promoted the idea that Yasuke is a samurai, we have seen this reflected on the actual Wikipedia page. It has been vandalized over and over again over the past couple of weeks, to the point where now there is no mention of a retainer. He is simply labeled as a samurai. Now, there's a lot going on here, and a lot of this traces back to a single source, a person named Thomas Lockley. This is a person behind the revisionist history of Japan and the characterization of Yasuke as a samurai instead of a retainer. Now, this book that he is responsible for making has been clowned on for many years now. In fact, users years back were even making fun of some passages of it, making ridiculous claims about Yasuke with no real proof. In fact, one of the funniest ones is the fact that this person tried to claim that there were descendants of Yasuke living in Japan and various parts of the world simply because their names sounded kind of similar to Yasuke. Now, there's been a lot of activity on the Wikipedia page, and you can pause and read some of this for yourself, but there has been activity on accounts associated with Thomas Lockley, where he has been intentionally removing and editing various articles that were used to cite Yasuke as a retainer, and eventually he would use his own book as the primary source to support the claim that Yasuke is a samurai, and now the media and many other places claim he is the expert on the subject. And as people have been criticizing his claims and criticizing his book, he has now taken a leave from social media, basically saying he is not open to any criticism regarding Assassin's Creed and any of the people trying to use his book as a source to back up the claim that Yasuke is a samurai. Now, things have gotten even worse because users in Japan have discovered the work of Thomas Lockley, and they are extremely concerned about some of the content contained within that book. So one user here says this: they claim that in his book, he tries to push the notion that after Yasuke was considered a samurai and given that right, enslavement of Africans became a popular trend in Japan, which is an outrageous claim with no real support. And another user here claims that the English version of his text is wildly different from the Japanese version, as if he is trying to hide some of the changes to the English text. On top of that, another user claims that this entire book and various videos and articles that are using it as a source are now promoting the idea among users that there is a racist history of Japanese people towards African people and black people in general, which is a very disparaging thing and is now creating this idea that that is a truth when it is in fact not. And moving forward, things get even worse. That's going to be the theme of today's video. Things keep getting worse even though you think it can't possibly get worse. So recently, Assassin's Creed on their official French account made this post sharing some wonderful tributes to the Assassin's Creed setting in-game. And this merchandise is supposed to be available a few days ago, and this was immediately hit with great criticism, not only in person at Japan Expo, but online as well. So you can immediately see this tweet was hit with a community note, and when you translate it, it says this: "This is Zoro's toy sword from the Japanese manga One Piece. This is not a Japanese sword from the Muromachi period in Japan, nor is it a work of art by Ubisoft." Yes, this is really, really bad. As pointed out by users here, Japanese users, when you translate, the sword that they're promoting as original merch is actually just the sword from Zoro from One Piece. That's it. They basically just hijacked it. In fact, it gets even worse. You can find all these items that they're selling for this merch drop on Amazon. These are pre-existing items from Amazon that they're basically just taking and then labeling falsely as commemorative pieces from this era of Japanese history. And the outrage stemming from these Japanese users really contradicts some of the main claims that people have been making on Twitter and game journalists have been making as well, that all of the outrage surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows is manufactured by English-speaking users from the West who are trying to basically use this game in the Japanese setting to promote this idea that there's Japanese outrage when there isn't. But we're going to see that that is not the case. There is a very, very large uproar from Japanese gamers and alike. Let's give you some of the examples that people are trying to ignore as proof that Japan is upset about this game. Number one, look at the trailer. This is the original trailer from Ubisoft Japan. Look at the like-dislike ratio on that. People will try to pretend that this is all people false flagging English speakers coming on here to hit the dislike button. On top of that, here's one of the most recent promotional pieces from Ubisoft Japan. You can see the like-dislike ratio, literally in the shadow realm. It's absolutely abysmal. Here's another example of things going on. So at Anime Expo Japan, the Assassin's Creed Shadow booth was completely vacant. Nobody was using it. In fact, a lot of people considered the chairs, the empty chairs from this spot, as a resting spot. Somewhere to basically sit down because there was available chairs for people who are walking around all day. That is how little interest there is in this game. In fact, the only interest is outrage. On top of that, there is a big petition going around on the Japanese side of social media. At one point, only 2 weeks ago, it was reported that this Japanese petition had 30,000 signatures. Well, in the 2 weeks since then, it has now risen to over 90,000 signatures. Once again, people on Twitter will try to convince you this is a bunch of English speakers going over here to sign this petition, and none of these people are actually from Japan, which is an outrageous claim. On top of that, in this petition, the reason they're making this and the reason they claim it's so important is because they believe that Assassin's Creed Shadows and Ubisoft are trying to rewrite the history of Japan and recharacterize how Yaskuke is portrayed. And they think this is a very dangerous thing and it must be stopped. In fact, it's gone way beyond just the petition at this point. Now, Japanese politicians are getting involved in this situation, and they're trying to bring this before greater parties. So, as reported here, Japanese politician Satoshi Hamada recently signaled he might bring up Ubisoft and their upcoming game Assassin's Creed Shadows before the Japanese Diet, the country's legislative body, for altering the country's history, architecture, and more, as well as potentially using AI to generate images of the time period the game is supposed to be set. On top of that, it gets even worse. So, as reported by Mark Kern here, at Ubisoft has raided Japanese culture, appropriating vast swaths of it without permission, and they are very, very upset. It was not approached with any respect. Lantern and other artifacts taken without permission. This is one of the many examples Japanese keep sending me. So let's see what these screenshots say. Translated from Japanese, this says, when we asked the public relations officer, he told us that he does not approve any commercial use and is aware that it's been used without permission by Assassin's Creed. When checking the footage from the game, he can confirm that this is the lantern from the temple and they did not have commercial use rights to do this. On top of that, there's been other confirmed reports where the actual rights holders could not disclose to a third party that they did not give permission to Ubisoft, but you can tell by just looking at images, they are basically a one-to-one comparison, and it's very clear that they would have to have permission, and it seems like they didn't have permission in this case either. So basically, looking at this situation in its totality, there is a lot of vandalism and what some would consider cultural appropriation. We hear that buzzword, that buzz phrase all the time, right? People always saying, stop cultural appropriation. What do you call what's going on with Assassin's Creed? If you want to have a legitimate use of that phrase, there it is. That looks way more like it than other things that have been claimed to be a part of that phrase in the past. In fact, if you look at journalists right now, games journalists, look at this ridiculous set of reports from The Gamer. On one hand, they're claiming that Genshin Impact's petition to stop cultural appropriation reaches all these signatures. And yet when they think about Assassin's Creed Shadows, they basically dismiss any criticism and outrage surrounding this game and its appropriation of Japanese culture. That just really shows you where these games journalists are at right now. They do not care about the outrage about this game, especially when it comes from Japanese gamers and alike. And it's very, very obvious the bias that is going on here. You would think, based on everything that we just talked about, all these different examples, that this would be a golden ticket for these games journalists, but none of them are talking about it. None of the mainstream type games journalists have mentioned this stuff at all. In fact, it's only the more lesser known ones who actually have the balls to talk about these stories who are reporting on that, and those are the ones that I shared in this video. But for now, that's going to do it for the Assassin's Creed drama. I'm sure there's going to be more coming out over the coming weeks, and when it does, I'll be here to report on it. But that's going to do it for this video. As always, I hope you guys appreciated the video, and feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time.